Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tax Workflow Automation, Make Your Tech Investment Count. This webinar is brought to you by CPA Practice Advisor Magazine and SafeSend. I'm Gail Perry, Editor-in-Chief of CPA Practice Advisor, and I'll be your moderator today. Before we get started, I'd like to explain how CPE for this webcast works. The webcast qualifies for 1 credit of continuing professional education. If you plan to earn CPE for attending this session, you must stay with us for at least 50 minutes. In addition, we will display 7 polling questions during the webcast. You need to record an answer for at least 3 of the questions, as this is our verification that you are still watching the event. You will receive an email by the end of the day today that contains a link to your CPE certificate, assuming you met the requirements for CPE. Please note that we can give CPE credit for multiple people watching on the same computer. So if there are others in your office who would like to attend this event at the same computer, please have them join you now. And at the end of the event, we'll provide an opportunity for you to send us their email addresses. You can enter questions at any time in the Ask a Question box that appears on your screen. And our speaker will try to get to as many questions as possible during the presentation. Questions not answered during this broadcast will be addressed by the speaker afterwards via email. Today, we are joined by Joe Wroblewski, Senior Product Enthusiast at SafeSend. And now we are ready to begin.
Thank you very much, Gail. Hoping everybody can see my screen here. Now, what we're going to be going through today, and see, is everybody able to see the screens that's showing up? The first slide?
We can. We see the slides.
Thank you so much. I'm so sorry. Welcome, everybody. What we're going to be going through today is a presentation on tax workflow automation. We want to help you make your tech investment count. Gail went through the administrative items already, so I'm going to skip through that, and we're going to get right into the agenda. We are going to be having, there are quite a few poll questions today, 7. You may be sore afterwards. But we're going to go through the items on your screen during this webinar. We're going to do a little get to know the audience question. We'll go through a little bit about the history of SafeSend and the SafeSend suite. And then we'll start hitting in the primary points of the presentation itself. What are the common points of frustration for firms and for clients? How do you recognize the new technological advances that are automating tax practices? How do you go through understanding and identifying automation solutions that best fit your firm and your clients? And how do you evaluate and develop a client-centric approach for tax engagements? As we're going through, please ask questions, chat them. We do have another person here from SafeSend, Donna, who will chat back responses, and we should be able to get through everything we have, any questions that come in. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is get into polling question number 1.
All right, our first question for you is, we would like to know who our audience is. So please indicate if you identify yourself with tax, audit, bookkeeping, other, or all of the above. And if you have, at any time, if you have any problems answering the question on your screen, sometimes this happens when people are using a phone or another device to watch the event. You can always enter your answer in that Ask a Question box, and we'll record it there. Okay, and we'll leave that question up for just another few seconds. And then we're going to go ahead and share our results with our audience.
Great. Thank you for taking care of that. And we are going to move on into a little bit of what Gail already talked about. She already introduced me. My name is Joe. I've been with SafeSend for 10 years now. And what I'd like to really move into is kind of just quickly going over the history of SafeSend and the SafeSend suite, and where we are, so you can better see what our intent is with the programs and modules that we have. So SafeSend Returns is really the core of our suite of products. and it is the market leader in tax return workflow automation and client collaboration technology. I'll be going through a lot more today about what exactly that means and why it could really benefit you. But the suite overall, the modules that we've added into SafeSend Returns to create this, our goal with this is to automate every touch point for your client across the entire tax engagement process. As far as the company history goes, SafeSend was started in 2008 with the launch of TickTie Calculate, which is still a product that is available and is in wide use. It is an Adobe plugin for preparing work papers. Beyond that, or once after that, we launched SafeSend Exchange, which is secure file transfer program. So clients can send things back and forth to you, and you can send things to them very easily. And with all of our modules that we'll be going over today, your clients don't need passwords or usernames. There are no questions about that. Let's see. Second here. I think that there is something wrong with the camera. I just noticed that. Let me see if that's going to fix that. I apologize. You are still hearing me? Okay, great. Then I'm going to keep moving along, and I don't know what's going on with the camera, why that stopped, but we'll see if we can get that up and running here. Sorry about that. During the next poll, I will see what I can work on my end. I'm so sorry. All right. So we have, since the launch of Exchange, then we went into adding an electronic signature module, which is now part of the suite as well, called Signatures. After that, we sort of combined the two into what was the first iteration of SafeSend Returns, which was really just a way for your clients to receive one email and be able to go from that email into reviewing their return and signing e-file forms. I'll talk about why that was quite the innovation at the time. We've also added beyond that, since then, the ability to receive automatic reminders about estimated payments coming up and even be able to update those, as well as distribute K1s and quite a few other things. We've been fortunate enough to win 4 innovation awards as of now from CPA Practice Advisor, which is just incredibly hard to believe. It seems it's very exciting. And what I'm going to go into next is kind of SafeSend by the numbers here. Just showing you a basic overview of what we've been able to accomplish. What kind of firms do we have? It's 280 of the top 400 firms, and how many hours we've been able to help firms save on time, so that people at firms, the staff, partners, managers can work more with clients and building those relationships. Our goal with the suite is, again, we want to help your clients with every touch point throughout the entire tax engagement lifecycle. That starts with preparing returns at the beginning of the season, getting engagement letters out through signatures or even through organizers. So we have an e-signature module. We have an organizer module that converts your organizer to fillable form fields automatically. Your clients will get an email. They'll be able to sign their engagement letter if they've received an organizer and start filling out the organizer on the screen in front of them. And they can even drag and drop source documents right back in. With Exchange, I mentioned that already. That is now part of the suite. It is still an Outlook plugin, as it always has been. But with that, again, clients can send and receive secure messages and documents to you anytime they need to. We have a way for you to send extensions out. And that, again, the core of the program itself is getting returns through the SafeSend Returns. And what this part of the program does is it automates the assembly and delivery for 1040s, 1041s, 1065s, 1120s, and 1120Ss. So it really cuts down the time because we can take care of collating your returns in about a second, splitting any return up into filing instructions, tax return, e-file form, vouchers, K1s, invoice, whatever's in the return that's transmitted into our system. And returns can be delivered to your client on average in about 3 to 5 minutes per return. Now, that is going to take us into polling question number 2 here. I'd like to see, go ahead, Gail.
All right, our second polling question is, which tax software does your firm currently use? And the options we're giving you are CCH Access, CCH Pro System FX, Thomson Go System, Thomson UltraTax, Intuit's Listcert or other. So please go ahead and check if you use tax software, check whichever one most applies to you. If you don't use tax software, just go ahead and choose other as your answer. Okay, and I think we've got all of our answers in.
Great, thank you very much again. And from here, we're going to move on to the topic for today. And it looks like maybe the camera's coming back up, I hope, which is obviously tax workflow automation, how to make your tech investment count. So what we're going to be covering today, we're going to look at kind of simple real life hurdles that every firm seems to face. We'll talk a lot about that. And that's not just at any one point, it is just throughout the entire tax engagement lifecycle. We'll talk about how to leverage automation, because it is become essential. It's absolutely vital at this point for firms to be adding forms, different types of automation, and we're going to talk about those as we go through. We're going to explore what does and doesn't work for tax professionals, and we'll review the benefits of using a suite of automation solutions built specifically for tax and accounting firms. We're going to start with a cartoon that one of our founders happens to really, really like, asking about digital transformation. What is it? And since you can see in the first area there, since it's their top priority here, what do we mean by digital transformation? And there are a lot of different answers for that. What does that exactly mean? What we're going to be looking at as part of automation is remote collaboration with clients. A lot of things that really, there are a lot of different ways to describe it. Zoom meetings using Slack, using throwing just a bunch of words up there. And it's really best to describe this by more what it isn't than what it is. And we're going to start with kind of getting to what digital transformation is going to do by talking about what hurdles you run into at the firm. And that'll sort of push us into kind of what we're looking for. Now, the biggest hurdle in any kind of client collaboration historically has been that it's just sort of a mess. There are too many ways to get information to clients. There are too many ways to get information from clients. And often communication hasn't been as good as it could possibly be. So you've got email, which is great for just basic messaging. But then you've also got mail going through just actual paper mail. You've got e-signing solutions that help with certain tasks. You have portals, which can be wonderful. They can also be horribly frustrating, depending on how well your client is at navigating through those portals and how familiar they've become with them. In person, always the best if you have time for it. That's really what we want to aspire to emulate electronically, is meeting with your client and going through the return with them, going over their documents with them. And then you have secure file transfer, which on its own is a great tool, but it's really a complement to just a lot of other things, a lot of other tools that will make a full solution. So just different ways you can see that your client is getting information from you, and how do they know where to turn and look, and how do they know what to send back to you. So we're going to go into some of the common points of frustration, or really just the hurdles that firms run into. And it's going to start with outdated processes filled with manual tasks that haven't been updated in years, which cause anxiety and burnout among staff. It's just frustrating. And you don't want your staff to get burned out, and you don't want them to be frustrated. There are ways that you could keep them happy, make them feel more empowered. Secure electronic delivery has outdated. It's difficult to navigate. Clients have issues with it. They want everything to be simple. They want it all to be anything they experience with you electronically. They want it to be like they're shopping on Amazon or checking their email. Retrieval of organizers and source documents is painful and time consuming. I think everybody understands that. It's hard to get even more than 20% of organizers completed. There should be a better way to do this so that your client can do it without even really thinking much about it. Now, Acquiring signatures on engagement letters and e-file forms is difficult to manage and a nuisance for clients. And remote client collaboration has been clunky and confusing overall. And again, it's coming from so many different places, it's just hard for clients to know what to do. Now, where you can find automation easy in the tax engagement lifecycle is really, you can see here the 4 big steps of getting through the tax prep process here. The easiest places where you can find automation when you're looking for that. And what you're looking for really is what tasks are repetitive, where are there errors that maybe don't need to be. These are things that you can generally automate, and that's usually going to be found at the stage 1 here, the front end data collection, as well as part 4, assembly, delivery, and e-file. Those are the areas that you're looking for automation. The rest of it is really, you really want human contact with some of that stuff. But this is where a lot of the mind-numbing manual tasks are that you want to kind of eliminate if at all possible. Now, for just getting a tax return to a client, just getting one of those ready, you can see here all the different things that need to happen. So just a standard tax return, somebody there is going to need to break down, traditionally anyway, break down each return into filing instructions, tax return, e-file forms, vouchers, estimated payments, K-1s, invoice. And these are things that can take a lot of time, and they don't have to. It's important to make sure that this information is split up so that you can present it to your client in a way that makes sense to them. But you've got assemble and delivery. You've got return signer signatures that need to be placed. You have signature fields for clients. If you're using an e-sign vendor, you need to find out where those need to be placed. That can be automated. Everything in this blue box can really be automated. And these are things that you can then take the time you were spending on this and move them towards client relations so that K-1s can get distributed very easily. You can even get paid through this without taking time out of your staff's day. Now, I mentioned earlier that when we started the SafeSend, we had very quickly, we had a secure file transfer program, and then we had an e-sign program. And they were working separately, though at the same time. And a lot of firms wanted a way for those 2 things to happen at once. And that's really kind of a big deal, that whole disparate mess. We want to combine as many things as possible into one kind of fluid motion for your clients. So we've got the tax software package, you're producing a package, you've got a tax return, you've got e-file forms. If that can be taken care of at once, it's going to be easier for your client. Right now, we have a lot of firms are sending out the tax package through a portal or secure file transfer or password protected email or something like that. And then you've got an e-file form going out through an e-sign vendor. Your client is often confused by that. And we'll get into more on that here in a little while. Combining those and then adding in other features is really just going to make it a lot simpler for your staff and for your clients. And that is going to bring us here into the 3rd polling question.
Okay. Our next question is, what % of tax return packages did your firm send digitally, like with a PDF, to clients during this past filing season? And your options are just 0 to 25%, 26 to 50%, 51 to 75%, 76 or more, or not applicable because you don't do that sort of thing. So go ahead and click the option that most aligns with your experience and then click submit. Okay, it looks like our answers are all in. I'm impressed that a third of our attendees are in the 76% or more category.
That is amazing. That's really great. It's nice to see that people are doing this more and more. It seems like every month or so, there's another big step up. That's great. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. And thank you everybody for answering that question. What we are going to look at first, as far as kind of the big, or next, as far as the big kind of frustrations that clients have and that firms have, it has to do with portals. Portals can be amazing if you have clients, for those clients who enter them and navigate through them often and they understand them and they know how to use them. But for a lot of your clients, you've got people who are only trying to get their information once a year or twice a year, and they have to create an account. They have to have a password. And every year, it seems, they're calling the firm and asking for their password to be reset. They don't know what it is. They don't know what their username is, or they're creating so many accounts that they're just using the same password for everything, which is basically like not having a password at all. And they're just exhausted from them. Clients don't typically want to have another account at all. It's just a lot for them to have to manage. So this right here, this next slide is the portal circle of frustration for clients. What are they running into and what can be done about it? So it starts often with your staff sending the tax return and the e-file forms through the client portal. And the client gets an email notification. They click on the link, go to the login to download those files, but they forgot their password. So they send an email back to the staff and just to get a password reset or to get some help. That's usually all they want. Typically, that's not going to happen when it's really slow. It's only happening when it's really busy, because that one time a year that the client wants to get into their portal, every client wants to get into their portal, and you have to take some time out of your schedule now to help them, whether it's resetting their password by sending it to IT maybe and having them reset, or doing it yourself. It takes time. And then when the client does get through, often it doesn't work. They maybe don't know what they're doing sometimes, but it often doesn't work the way it should. So they fail that. And then they contact staff again. So now you've got to stop what you're doing again. And what you're doing is getting returns to clients. And they just want to know why they can't just be emails instead of having to go through a portal that just doesn't even look very familiar to them or very intuitive. Now, the staff then, typically what you will do at the firm is you'll get that return often just to kind of get them to stop bugging you. And it takes some time to do this, because now you've got to get that return, sort of have to reassemble it, download it, password protect it as PDFs and get it off to the client. And that can take a lot of time. It's certainly taking time out of other things that need to be done. And then at that point, the client gets that email with that password protected PDF, but they want to forward it on to somebody, or they save it and then they open it up again and they don't have that email that had the password in it, and they're stuck again. They're calling you yet again, and they don't understand how difficult it is to make sure that everything is secure and everything is compliant. They just want you to email their information to them, so that it's simple for them, and that's really not something that anybody should be doing. So you're at a loss. Now, the challenges overall of electronic delivery, it's beyond just a portal. So if you're sending an email attachment, I just mentioned this when I was going with that portal of frustration, clients struggle accessing encrypted PDF files because of passwords or even devices that don't have the same PDF viewer that you've encrypted that with. Then they don't know how to open those up. They lose the ability to, you as a firm would lose ability to provide instructions that you really want your client to know, and logical presentment. So you want to be able to go through these things as if you were sitting with your client to make sure they understand what they're looking at. And you lose that with a lot of electronic delivery anyway, but it seems especially difficult with an email attachment. And for e-file forms, if it's an email attachment, your client's going to have to return those manually. You really want to get away from that. It's your clients generally know that it's easier to e-sign, and they're looking for it. We talked about the client portal for the second part here below email attachment. That also includes some issues with secure file exchange solution. They struggle accessing portals because of the IDs and passwords. And industry experts are finally accepting the fact that less than 35% of your clients are going to adopt your client portal. E-sign solutions present an interesting way of getting information to your clients. And they certainly are a wonderful way of getting things signed, especially e-file forms and engagement letters and consent forms. But it only solves one of the requirements. So you can get 8879 signed very quickly and have them go through that knowledge-based authentication process. But what about the rest of the information? how are you presenting it to your client in the right order, so that they can go through and they can review the return and then go into signing. Often if you're sending the entire return and you have it set up for e-signing, they're going right to the signing forms, and then a week later, you're going to be recalling that return because something needs to be corrected because they haven't actually reviewed it. And how do you get their vouchers going through that way as well? It's typically going to have to go out through another source, another method, and that's more communication with your client, more notifications that they may miss. And then also, what do you do with K1s, invoices, any kind of attachments? So for polling question number 4, which is next.
All right, our next question is, what percent of 1040 8879s did you send with an e-signature request during this past busy season? 0 to 25%, 26 to 50%, 51 to 75%, 76 or more, or not applicable. So go ahead and answer that. We'll look at our responses as they're coming in. And it seems like we're at the top and bottom ends of the spectrum.
That has been happening a lot lately. It's very odd that, especially the last few weeks, that I've noticed that quite a bit. No middle room there. Now, we left off there with kind of going through some e-signing and what the issues might be. E-signing is a wonderful tool, but it's not a complete solution. What you want to make sure that when you select an e-sign vendor to help with that automation, that you ask the right questions and that they are a good fit for your firm and for your clients. You know your clients better than anybody. Are your clients technically savvy enough to be able to e-sign, just to use that in general? Does the e-sign provider allow for joint returns where primary and spouse are going to be signing? Are you allowed to share email addresses? Do you have to know both email addresses before you even send it? Just some things to think about. And one thing we always recommend, regardless of what technology and automation tools you end up using, always let your clients know ahead of time that this change is happening. Let them know what to expect. It is only going to bring about success by telling them what is going on. Where should they expect emails to be coming from? What does it look like for them? The more you can do with that upfront, the easier everything's going to be, because change is hard on everybody. Even though your clients want this change to be made, when it actually happens, they're going to have questions. And so the more you can do to kind of nip that in the bud up front and be proactive, the better. Now, e-signing also introduces some new process problems, and these are things we talked about on the last slide. How do you get the rest of the return to your client? Again, this is a tool, not a solution. It's a complement to other tools that can kind of help bring everything all together into one. So you can get the entire return to your client. You can ensure that they're going through things in the right order and hopefully understanding every part of the process. And then you can do things even beyond that. E-signing, like portals, has some frustrations involved with it too for your clients. And a lot of that is going to be with email addresses and with something called knowledge-based authentication, if you're not already aware of what that is. We will talk a lot more about that. So when e-file forms are ready to go out, if you have and you're using your e-sign vendor, typically it starts with your staff needing to send out e-file forms and sometimes the return as well. Your staff doesn't have both email addresses for a joint return. That often just puts a stop on the process with a lot of e-sign vendors. So make sure when you're doing your research that you can accomplish joint returns can be signed regardless of whether you have both email addresses or even if they're sharing an email address. Make sure you ask about that. So beyond that, let's say you do have both email addresses, taxpayer and spouse, but they're sharing one. Is that an option with that vendor? So that can stop a lot of things right in their tracks as well. Beyond that, when you're getting your e-file forms prepared, your staff is often going into each one and they're dragging a signature field for each taxpayer. They're dragging date fields, and hopefully they don't miss any. It is certainly open to a little bit more error than there needs to be. That can be automated. Those fields are easy to recognize. You want to see if that vendor automates the placement of signature fields for taxpayers on all tax forms. Then, and then the firm sends the e-file forms out, and then they separately send the return out, and you don't know what the client's going through. What are they seeing? What is their experience like? And they're not going through in the right order. They're going through and signing things, and then they're going over and looking at payments, and maybe they'll review the return, maybe they won't. After that is where it gets even trickier. Because if you don't prepare your clients for what's coming, if the e-sign vendor has a different email address than where the return is coming from, your clients might not even see that their email about their e-file authorizations needing to be signed went into spam. So make sure that they're aware of that so that they know what to expect again. There's also the knowledge-based authentication process. So there's an IRS requirement for 1040 taxpayers, if you're not already aware of it, where each 1040 taxpayer needs to go through their own unique set of questions, multiple choice questions. And if the primary taxpayer can't get through, the first person to go through, if they can't get through those KPA questions, they're done often. And you want to make sure that they have other options and that they see clear instructions of what to do next. So they're not just calling you saying, I can't get through these questions, send this again, or send it to me manually. If the first person does get through the knowledge-based authentication, an email will then typically just go right to the next person. They need to know what to expect. So you need to be very clear with your communication so your clients know what is going on. Is it going to be sequential signing? Are both things going out at the same time? How is the spouse or second signer going to know that they have something to do? And if the first person signs electronically, they go through knowledge-based authentication, but the second one prints it and manually signs it. How do you download proof on the back end in the firm reporting? How do you download proof that the first person went through knowledge-based authentication? If you do get audited, how do you show the IRS that they passed knowledge-based authentication? It's often hard to get that information if both for a joint return if they both don't e-sign. There needs to be a way for you to get that information too. Now then, this next couple here aren't as relevant as they used to be because entity returns and trust returns can now be e-signed, at least through October of this year. The IRS is still allowing for that, and they don't have to go through knowledge-based authentication. So that's not something that you should have to worry about much at all. It should be very simple, but it'd be nice if all of the signature fields were automatically placed, certainly, and that everything was coming together and you knew your clients were better able to understand what they're looking at and in what order to go through things. From there, we're going to go into polling question number 5.
Thanks, Joe. I feel like I'm reliving my own tax season nightmares just looking at your e-sign circle of frustration.
I feel like Freddy Krueger sometimes.
Okay, our next polling question. What was your biggest frustration with e-sign on 8879s? The options are: I didn't know the spouse's email address. KBA questions were too difficult. It was confusing for clients. All of the above, or not applicable. And go ahead and choose the best response and then click submit. And watching these answers come in. Looks like all of the above is the most.
I think D is going to be a popular one.
All right. Yeah, I think there were a lot of tax season nightmares relating to this.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, certainly nobody is alone with any of those answers. But yeah, this looks like so far D seems to be doing pretty well.
I think we can go ahead and continue.
All right, thank you. So the slide that is up right now is very similar to something we looked at earlier. On the firm side, the things I pointed out, the things that need to be done to each return so that that can be automated, so that your client better understands what they're doing. There's also a responsibility on the client to go through a lot of those same things. So they need to be able to review the return and approve it and sign e-file forms, pay their vouchers and their estimated payments, distribute their K-1s, and they should pay you. Those are all things that can be automated on their end. And for them, you want it to be very simple. The less they have to think about, the better. The fewer words on the screen for them, the better. You want it to just be very smooth for them and just kind of drag them through the process. But getting this to them and explaining all of this can be difficult. And you want to find a solution that really tackles that all in one fluid motion for them. And we're going to move into, I apologize for so many questions today, to this one, and then we'll have a little break from the questions.
All right. Polling question number 6. How did you send organizers to clients during the past tax season or at the head of the last tax season? Your options are mostly paper, mostly digital, but the client had to print it and scan it and mail it back. Digital, completely digital. The client did not have to print, didn't have to scan, didn't have to mail it back. Or 50-50 paper and digital, depending on the client or the partner preference or whatever other circumstance might have. So, okay, pick the one most appropriate to your situation and then click submit. Okay, and these answers look like they're pretty much across the board. So a little of everything.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Organizers are difficult, difficult to get completed.
All right, ready to move on.
All right. So far we've been talking a lot about just returns, but getting organizers out is also really important, and getting more than like 20% completed and back to you is also important. And one of the things you can do with that is automate a lot of that process. We'll be looking more at that here in a little while. Moving into the next section here is recognizing new technological advances. So how do you identify the needs of your firm and your staff? So staff and clients have both clearly embraced remote, especially over the last few years. Automation is here to stay, and it's only going to become more and more a part of your firm processes. Workflows and processes need to be reevaluated, even those that you have spent a decade really honing and perfecting. You need to be open to maybe making some changes so that you can really free up a lot of time and work on other things, so that your staff can really just do a lot more for your clients. Your clients can do a lot more. You can have more clients coming in. Paper isn't really much of an option anymore at all. It shouldn't be for most of you. It isn't for most of you based on the polling questions, and it should really be a last resort. Another need to identify is how do you empower your staff and attract clients that you might never even meet. So we're in an age right now where your clients aren't necessarily coming from down the street. They can find a firm anywhere in the country, and staff can do the same thing for finding work. So you want to make sure that you're really empowering your staff so that they know how much you care, and that you want one way to do that is to remove some of those tasks that are just really mind-numbing, repetitive tasks that don't need to be done. They can be automated so your staff can focus on their own careers, the firm as a whole, your client relations, and really advance, and they'll be happier overall. and you really want to find out how you can best redeploy your energy and stay ahead of other firms. So when you're identifying needs, you really want to evaluate firm-specific needs, pain points, and areas where automation can bring the most significant benefits. Which tasks are most time-consuming, for example, or prone to error or repetitive. Those are the things that you're looking for. Those are the needs that you want to identify. And then you want to take that and find solutions and goals. So for establishing goals, typically this should be kind of across the board for everybody. Standardize internal firm processes. I know it's hard to do that with different partners wanting very specific things for them, but the more you can standardize, the more benefits there are across the firm. Shrink internal firm manual tasks to save time, reduce errors, return a more positive ROI. Digital remote client experience for collaboration. It's what everybody is expecting at this point. I mentioned empowering staff. I'm going to be saying it a few more times throughout. Empower your staff, which leads to empowering your firm and ultimately your clients. And the sooner your firm can leverage automation, the higher your value add will be. Automate those tasks that don't involve client contact. Spend more time building those relationships. That's really kind of the end goal right there. For finding solutions, the best ways to find solutions, really, research. You want reputable vendors, obviously. You want to read reviews. You want to compare different features. And it's not always enough just to have the tools. There are a lot of great tools out there. But you want to have a combination of sophistication and ease of use. Ease of use is important, as well as training and support. What is that going to be? How is the transition going to be? You want to make sure you talk to the vendors and find out what that's going to look like for your staff. Post-pandemic, clients have embraced remote. They've learned how to function remotely, and they're seeking intuitive remote digital collaboration tools, even if they don't know what any of those words are. You want to look at solutions that also are compliant and offer security, and you want to evaluate potential ROI. These are big things to look at for any solution. Look for recommendations and testimonials. That's going to be a big thing. Use social media to find testimonials, really, and references and recommendations, or ask the vendor if they have them. This is all going to lead to developing a client-centric approach. The more focus you have on them and their experience going through the entire tax engagement lifecycle, the easier it is for them, the easier it is for your staff, for you, for your firm to grow. Now, we've looked at this at the very beginning. Again, these are the things that you want to be able to offer your clients throughout the entire tax engagement from start to end. The more familiar it becomes quickly to your clients, the better. If everything's always coming from one place, they know it's secure, they're familiar with it, it's a lot easier to get them involved in it, and a lot easier to be successful with it. Again, we looked at the different solutions that are out there for the front-end data collection, the assembly, delivery, and e-file. We've talked a little bit about that. We have different tools within the suite for the front-end collection. We have an e-signature module, organizer module, exchange, different ways of getting documents back, getting things signed. You can use extensions as often as you need to, and you can get returns assembled and delivered and e-file forms completed. That also comes with distribution and e-signing. For tax returns, what we do, and I mentioned this earlier, we assemble and collate the returns automatically. In a second or two, your tax return is broken up into all the sections. We showed you a couple different times, from filing instructions down through invoicing and K1s. You shouldn't need to do that. Those pages are pretty easy to assemble and collate for a robot. For our system, they can recognize and move those pages where they need to be. Focus on QCing that process and delivering the return. That is not just for returns. Organizers can be assembled as well, and extensions can be, and you can get all of that automated, and the workflow can even be very similar for your clients all the way through. So we've got extensions here as well. And what we're trying to get to, I think you've heard me say it now a few times, one touch point automation for everything. engagement letters, document request lists, which we just added, organizers, tax returns, and more. So what do we do here at SafeSend is we embrace automation to empower staff, because automation can help firms handle client loads with the same or less staff. There have been staffing shortages. We're certainly not ever talking about replacing staff or getting rid of anybody, but there have been shortages and you need to be prepared. Automation helps to retain staff and attract new talent by automating repetitive, mind-numbing tasks that people not only don't want to do, but they shouldn't need to do. And we have automation. Automation overall has really revolutionized, especially these last 5 years, the tax and accounting industry, because it does reduce manual tasks, it minimizes errors, it improves compliance, and it allows the firm to focus on the client to high value. What I'm going to go through real quick is just a demonstration, just a basic demonstration of what a client would go through when a return was sent to them. If we have time, we'll go through an organizer as well. Getting a return, I'll be showing my screen here in a second. Getting a return to a client should take 3 to 5 minutes. Getting an organizer to a client should take 30 seconds. It's very simple. And what your clients will end up going through for that, let me open this up here. And what I'm going to pull open is all right. And I'm hoping you guys can see my screen here. I've got 2 emails on the screen. One is for a tax return and one is for an organizer. So I'm going to go through first the organizer so we can start at the beginning of the season. You've sent your organizer through organizers and through the suite. This one has an engagement letter, and your clients can get to access everything they need, fill everything out that they need to fill out, and even return documents through this. So this is the typical email that a client would see. And from here, all they need to do is click on this link. And when that opens up, I want to do one thing here real quick. Okay, so we've got an organizer envelope here. Your client's going to click Get Started. We don't have them create any kind of account. They don't need passwords. It's all dual factor authentication. In this case, for an organizer, it's an access code. So your client will request an access code. These can go to their phone as a text, or it can go to email. It'll look something like this. Once they put the code in, they're taken into their organizer. And this is what they'll see. So we've got a message from the firm. We've got 3 steps right down here. No matter what your client clicks on, if there's an engagement letter, that's where we're going to send them. They have to at least review that process, which really helps with getting those completed. If they're already in here, they're more likely to just complete them. So they can sign, they can draw their signature, only takes a few seconds, and when they click finish, they can move along into their organizer, and you now have at the firm a document that you can download. You've got a completed engagement letter. Anywhere they click next will take them into the organizer. This one is starting off with a customized questionnaire, which you can build, and everything in the questionnaire and the organizer is fillable, so they can check boxes, they can answer questions, they can send notes back to you even. Every page is fillable, and if there is existing information from prior years, your client will be able to edit it. On certain pages, they can even upload documents right back in here. So instead of having them enter W-2 information, they can drag and drop them right in here. And then they can move along. They can always save and continue later if they just don't have time to go through it. We'll start them right where they left off, or they can mark it as finished. They can also, beyond that, if they get another document, they can come back in here and they can click Upload Additional Documents, see anything they've already sent you, and upload even more. So it's nice and easy for them. You were always notified at the firm when documents have been uploaded and not yet downloaded by anyone, by any of your clients. And that's it. There's not a whole lot to it. We want it to be simple. so that your clients actually complete those. So you get that up from the 20% or so that are actually filling those out. The next thing I'm going to go through and show you real quick is just what it looks like to complete a return. We'll get through this pretty fast because it doesn't take much. So when a tax return has been sent to a client, they're going to get an email that looks like almost like any other email we have sent to them. So they're comfortable with these very quickly. When they click on the link, they're going to be taken to a tax folder. Again, what we're trying to do is replicate the experience of sitting with your client and going through the return right next to them. To get into the return, instead of a password again, it's going to be 2 pieces of information. So for this one, I've got Jack here who needs to put in the last 4 of their SSN and then request another access code. This code can go to their phone again or go to their email. Totally up to them. They can manage that information. And once they get that code in, that's when the real experience starts for them. This right here is what a tax return looks like for your client when they first get it. So we always present over here on the left a summary of the things they care the most about. What are they getting back and what do they owe? That's all going to be lined up here on the left. 3 steps in the middle. It's review, sign, pay. No matter what they click on, it's the right thing to click on. We're taking them through this process in a very specific order. So it's a message from the firm. If there's an invoice, they'll see that. If you have online pay, they'll have a button to pay you right here. Otherwise, they can move into the review stage. And for review, we'll take them through their filing instructions and transmittals, their tax return, and all they have to do, regardless of whether they've accessed their return from a phone, tablet, PC, or Mac, is just scroll. They can start downloading their tax documents here. They can even, from this stage, securely forward any part of their return onto a third party. And then they move to signing. And this is signing. It's e-sign or don't e-sign or opt out. We'll give them instructions if they opt out. Very few people do. But we'll show them what they need to do to get a manually signed form back to you. For e-signing, they're going to go through that knowledge-based authentication process I mentioned earlier. We have them enter their date of birth the first year they use the program. We have them check a box each year saying, I've reviewed my return. I'm now ready to move into signing. So you know they're going through things in the right order. And then they go into the questions. Now, these KBA questions can be, as part of the first circle of frustration earlier, you saw they can be frustrating. We have done 2 things to these questions to make them not frustrating. So for these questions, we have kind of switched them up so that they are compliant. The questions are unique. Nobody else would be able to get through them, but the success rate is over 97% and has been for through 8 tax seasons for millions of returns. The 2 things we did is we made sure that the questions that are asked of your clients are never about anything that happened more than 25 years ago. And most of the questions are pulled from public databases, not from credit. So nothing too difficult, no math. And even if they do miss one, they get 3 attempts. And we're not going to kind of say, hey, you failed that first attempt, and kind of send them back out and to start over again. It's very fluid. So that will reduce calls coming in about not understanding what's happening. We want this to be simple. It needs to be an anomaly for them to not be successful. And then they go right to their forms and they apply signatures. They can draw those signatures if they want to, but these fields were placed automatically by the system. So there are no errors. They're all required. And then they move along. And they move into the payment section where they can see tax payments. They can see estimated payments. They can make these payments by clicking pay, downloading whatever they need to download if they do want to pay them manually, or clicking pay online, which will take them to that authority's website automatically. That's all set up for you. It's all automated. You can even update estimates or add estimates throughout the year, and we'll update this in here for your client so they only see correct information. And then they're done. And this is what Jack's return will look like now for 7 years. There are no storage fees. He can get in here anytime he needs to for 7 years and handle any part of this return and even distribute K1s if that were part of this. Now, I'm going to go back in and get back over here. Great. And we should be back to the slides. And I'm going to go into the final polling question. I know I went through that very quickly, but we'd love to show you more of that demonstration and so you can see more of of the suite itself. Now, then this is the final polling question right here.
Okay, our final polling question is, are you interested in additional information about the SafeSend suite? And your options are yes or no. I'm just here for the CPE, don't contact me, or I'm not the right person. So go ahead and answer appropriately and then click submit. And while we're waiting for those answers to come in, I just wanted to mention to Joe, I really have enjoyed your presentation, but one thing that particularly stood out for me that I hadn't thought of before is I always think of all this automation as ways to make things easier for the accountant. And you really had a good focus on this is also making things easier for the taxpayer. And I really, really like that outlook.
It just seems so easy for them now to find a new firm if something's hard, you know?
Right.
And that doesn't need to happen. You can have different relationships, but just as solid a foundation as you always have.
Yeah. All right. I think we're about ready to wrap up. Do you have any final comments, Joe?
No, I just wanted to thank everybody and apologize for the video not working, but hopefully everybody got to see the slides and get the information they need. But I do very much appreciate everybody being able to attend.
All right. Thank you so much, Joe, for such an excellent presentation. We hope all of you enjoyed this webinar and got a lot out of it. We want to thank you for spending your time with us today. And also, we would like to thank SafeSend for making this event possible and for enabling us to offer a free CPE credit to each attendee. As a reminder, you'll receive a link to your CPE certificate later today in your email. It will be an email from CPA Practice Advisor. If you have any questions about CPE, please contact me directly at gperry, Gperry, at cpapracticeadvisor.com. And also, if others are watching this event with you at the same computer and they require CPE credit, you can email me their names and email addresses. Again, that's gperry at cpapracticeadvisor.com. Right after this event, you'll be presented with a post-event survey evaluation form, which will appear on your screen. We would appreciate it if you'd take a moment to share your feedback with us so that we can continue to improve our webinar series. Thank you again, everyone. Our audio will end now.